The conduct of the just concluded Anambra State governorship poll once again brought to the fore the inability of the independent National Electoral Commission to hold hitch-free elections in Nigeria. As usual, several voters were forced to wait for many hours, or they were completely disenfranchised due to either the late arrival of personnel and materials at the polling units or the malfunctioning of the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System devices. This left many observers wondering whether Inec has the capacity to conduct a nationwide election without problems. To discuss this and tell us what Inec should be doing to ensure that elections in the country run smoothly, we're now being joined by Mike Igini, a lawyer and the Akwa Ibom resident electoral commissioner. Mr. Igini will, among other issues, also talk to us about the Electoral Act amendment bill, which is now before the president, especially the tug-of-war between the state governors and federal legislators, who in amending the act made the conduct of direct primaries mandatory for all political parties in the selection of candidates seeking elective positions. Good morning, Mr. Igini, and thank you for joining us here in the studio in Lagos.
It's my pleasure to be here with you people. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Well, there will be a lot to talk about, Anambra and all of that, Electoral Amendment Act, but they say charity begins at home.
Great.
You are resident electoral commissioner in Akwa Ibom State. There was a case involving a certain Professor Peter Augman and another professor with regard to electoral malpractice, mismanagement of the process. The last time you were here, that case had not yet been determined, but now it's been determined. Do you want to start with that and just give us an update?
So thank you very much. For me, for the Commission, and for us Nigerians as a people, whether the institution of representative democracy will have a hopeful future in our country will depend essentially on the regular conduct of free, fair, credible, and more importantly, acceptable elections. This is what we have been doing in developing procedures that are replicable for the sustenance of democracy. Now, in Akwa Ibom State, before the 2019 election, we were very clear that all staff of the commission, both permanent or ad hoc, who are engaged for the elections, that they must exhibit the highest principle of ethical standards. And that if we must sustain, maintain, and hold the confidence of Nigerian people on the ballot as the best means of expression of the will of the people, that anybody, anyone who deviates from set standards, there will be consequences. Unfortunately, and very painfully, I can't believe that professors who were engaged, even though what these two universities did does not reflect the overwhelming, commendable work of their colleagues, but it's shocking that a professor, after the people have voted, will utter results. So the first one will secure conviction. He's been convicted for 3 years. But shockingly, just as Nigerians are celebrating, that at the National Assembly, we have passed, there's ongoing effort to have a electoral offenses commission. But the question is, the very one, and the biggest one, the first one of its kind in our history, that was convicted, yet another high court in Akwa Ibom, he hadn't stayed in the correctional center or prison more than 3 weeks or so, another high court of equal jurisdiction granted him bail from the correctional center. What's the reason? That the judge said he's worried that the Court of Appeal would delay the determination of the man's appeal, and granted him bail pending appeal. So, right now, we are at the Court of Appeal. But the second case of Professor Oduk, we are basically starting de novo. And that is coming up in the next 2 weeks. And that's one that had to do with a professor accepting, receiving from politicians already pre-collated results to make a return. That's an abomination. And so that is also coming up. But that underscores the importance of the innovation that we are doing in the commission to reduce the level of human interface. And that is why we must commend all stakeholders, the National Assembly. We want to commend the media, Rice Television, and your sister station for staying on the course of the period when there were controversies about e-transmission or otherwise. And so we thank everybody that we have gotten to where some of the things that we have put in place to ensure that the vote of the people, once expressed, should truly be a reflection of what happened, because the whole embrace of democracy, essentially because it brings about participation and accountability in the process of human development. So with respect to Akwa Ibom, those matters, they are coming up. The one that have been granted bail, we are already court of appeal, because in any society, when there are violations of rules, there must be consequence. Democracy cannot be sustained without the rule of law. The rule of law is a graceful ornament to a sustainable democracy. And so we are looking forward to that case, and we hope that some of the innovations we have put in place with respect to some of our innovations that need to be secured, because what we're interested in is to build an institution. All of us, resident commissioner, national commissioner, chairman, we are a passing phase in the history of Nigeria. We do our own bit so that when we leave office, we'll be proud of what we have done, and not what I see every time in our country. People who have opportunity to be in office, they will do nothing, so that they become emergency civil activists when they leave public office. We don't want to find ourselves in that position. But so far, so good. I listened to your intro about what happened in Anambra and all of that. But if you see that when it does settled, you'll discover that we made remarkable success in terms of the detail that I mean to give to you.
Right, so let's get into matters arising from the Anambra election, obviously. You've started off on the note of electoral offenses, so yeah. We'll start there. There was a lot of noise about a viral video that went around with some really honorable women in Anambra State rejecting inducements to vote for a particular party, such that one of those women was publicly rewarded by the governor, Willie Obiano, who gave her 1 million naira for her, forthrightness in being a Nigerian electorate. However, not a peep has been heard. If we're rewarding somebody, surely somebody should be punished.
Correct.
Not a peep has been heard about punishment. So I want you to talk about that vis-a-vis the Anambra election and irregularities that we saw there. We'll just start there, but obviously there's lots of other things to discuss with Anambra.
Sure. Thank you very much. You see, democracy is like an orchestra. You see, the melody of an orchestra is contingent on the unique sound different instruments bring to the entire melodious whole. In that respect, in democracy, for elections, for sanity in our democratic process, is a multi-stakeholder responsibility. On election day, the duty of security agencies is to look out, watch out. I also watched a video of somebody distributing money. That is the primary responsibility of security. Even though, under the law, a presiding officer is given the power to give order for the arrest of anybody doing the kind of things that we witness over time, not only in Anambra, it's a recurring thing in our country, but which is about vote buying. The problem we have in our country is that the pyramid of values is upside down. Dishonesty is on top. And right now, integrity is at the base. Why is it that as a people, we appear to be in autarky of best practices around the world? The problem of vote buying was addressed in 1856 through the introduction of secret balloting by the Australian people. All right? When it was introduced, that was what ended vote buying in England. Although it was resisted, even by the UK, in America, it took a while for United Kingdom to adopt it in 1872, then America in 1892. Now, what do I mean here? By the introduction of secret balloting, vote buying was the order of the day in England. In America, when we talk about the political machine in America, because every civilization today has a primitive past. Probably we are going through our primitive stage. But the point is that as a people, while we have been trying to reinvent the wheel, when the solution has been provided. Because in England, when vote buying was the issue as at that time, what happened? When they embraced secret balloting in 1872, they immediately enacted before 1872 the Corrupt Electoral Practice Act of 1871. Now, the consequence of that was that you could give money to people. You can share money for everybody. But on election day, because of the secrecy, that's what we call secret balloting, introduced by the people of Australia to deal with violence that was a hallmark of election before 1856. When they introduced that, so you go to the ballot, so you will have shared money for everybody. But you go in there, secretly, you made a choice. When it was first introduced in Australia, something in that country, people lost money. That's what discouraged vote buying. In our own case, we also do what we call secret balloting. We are doing what we call remodified open secret balloting system. Now, to check that, that to do with security, that's the business of security. Today, we are talking about establishing an Electoral Offences Commission. If we are serious as a people, somebody should be dealt with. I was in Kenya to observe the election. I was in Ghana. In Kenya, on the day of election, the campaign manager of a senatorial candidate was found sharing money like the type we saw in some of our elections in this country. He was arrested immediately. The court was on standby. The second day, we were still in Kenya. He was convicted for 3 years. What is going on in our country is that as long as we have a permissive system, because if you look at the one of Akwa we are talking about, they are sending money all over the place, forgetting the fact that, oh, he's a professor. Why is it that in our country? You see, if we must make an example to drive home that of our seriousness, we must deal with the big guns. They must be the one we must deal with first. Okay. Because very many of them you see today, okay, they're supposed to be in prison.
Okay. I like the comparison, or the illustration you made of society being like an orchestra.
Yes.
And you said for democracy to work and elections to work is incumbent on the tunes.
Yes.
Different tunes. But one other part you didn't add, that for the tunes to be in sync, there must be a conductor of the orchestra.
Absolutely.
What is wrong with the conductors of the orchestra of our electoral integrity? A lot of people will argue that this Akwa Ibom case is because it happened under your watch and you took it on strongly. That's why you can push it, to this logical conclusion or this ongoing developing story that it is today. The case is not the same. If you call Inec up, Inec will say we are stretched. If you call civil society, they will say, oh, go back to the wage report. It's there. So it's as if there is no clear conductor in this orchestra.
Rufai, I agree with you that the sound of an orchestra, it is not a symphony. It is not a symphony, but it's not a concerto. That it must have a conductor. And that conductor in a democracy is the rule of law. The rule of law, people don't understand that what makes the difference between developed society and undeveloped society has to do with the rule of law. And I've recommended for several people that, look, those of you who want to be in public affairs, go and read the work of How a Nation Fared by Acemoglu and Robinson that underscore the essence of the rule of law. As a matter of fact, our electoral process is not based on trust. We lack trust in our system because of the difficult elections we have had before in this country. Inec has been, before we came up, I've been under what we call credibility recession for a very long time. 2003, 2007, difficult elections. In fact, 2007 election ought to have been annulled. All right? So everything that we are doing is to take a commission from that part. And you cannot agree that since 2011 till date, the elections we have conducted are of a remarkable departure from what we used to have before in this country. But we are still having difficulties. As I said, look, there are 5 or 6 principal stakeholders that the success of our democracy will rest on. 1, the conductor, the umpire. The umpire, we have continued to demonstrate in our actions, in our inactions, in the things we do or fail to do, that this country, we must not be on the race to the bottom in every aspect of our life. That this Inec, under now the current leadership of Mahmoud, with all the commitment and assurances evidently proven, that we will tell people that as a people and show to the whole world that we have the capacity to conduct elections that will produce legitimate leaders, leaders that will be respected outside the world, because people have not realized the fact that investment decision, either by our own Nigerians who are going out, as well as foreigners, is based on the kind of elections we conduct. People look at the environment. How do leaders emerge? It's very important. And so we play our own part. So you have Inec, you have the judiciary, you have the security, you have the political party, you have the media, and you have civil society. I can tell you here that the trinity of 3 of the 6 I've mentioned, we turn our fortune around, which are Inec, in the event that somehow people are able to find their way through the process wrongly, we should have a judiciary that should stand tall and mighty in defense of democracy and the rule of law. But more importantly, that on election day, the trinity I'm talking about, we must have a security system, security personnel that must not be unbiased, that must be neutral, because it's about the country. We must have a system that we ourselves should be proud of, that should be a heritage, that should bequeath to our children, future ones, whose faces we are yet to see, whose name we may never know, all of which should say of us that in our own time, we did what was necessary. And so, for the melodious whole, for the sound of democracy to continue, you require the partnership of all the 6 I've mentioned. INEC cannot do so. Do everything. The media ever committed to your credo, the people's right to know. That is what is expected. The judiciary, my constituency, I am not happy with my constituency. I must tell you, look at what a judge did. Why is it that it's only the poor people in this country that you can take to court? When it comes to big men, you can grant them bail. It's most unfortunate.
2 quick issues. One on Anambra, the other national. The one on Anambra, we saw that spectacle on television of the returning officer for Urumba North, saying that he was compelled to sign the results under duress. Is that standard practice for INEC? And then secondly, this issue of direct primaries, which is now a big issue. The APC caucus held a meeting the other day with the governors on one side and the lawmakers on the other side. The People's Democratic Party is also threatening to go to court INEC, speaking through Festus Okoye, also says direct primaries will put a big burden on the government. Could you help us, comment on this?
Thank you very much. On the first issue about DRS, that is a complete aberration. There's no provision to accommodate a return based on DRS. As a matter of fact, the commission is going to look into that, but I must acknowledge that University of Calabar academics, they have proven. I started working with them.
Some of them are Malabites.
Yeah, well, great.
Products of the university.
So they have done so well because we started this whole thing with them. I spent 4 years, 11 months and 5 days in Cross River State, where we had this interaction from inception under Jega. And since then, in fact, on record, Unicar academics were the first in this country to be taken out of jurisdiction to the same Anambra that we are talking about now. And they've been the one who will be taken to Anambra because they've been doing very well. But this particular issue that you have raised is a bit concerning that such a thing will happen. So it's a complete aberration. With respect to direct or indirect primaries, let me say this here, and to correct some insinuations out there. A journalist has asked me, why is it that INEC is uncomfortable that he listened to our spokesperson, our respected National Commissioner, Professor Okoye, that he was uncomfortable, that INEC is uncomfortable with the direct primaries. And I said that is wholly incorrect. I listened to him. That what Festus Okoye said was simply to say, look, whatever mode of primaries legislated for the commission as a creation of law, it's our duty by virtue of Section 85 to go and monitor. However, what we also must take on board is that it requires additional personnel from us, and that also has what we call budgetary implications. But in any case, that's all he said. And not that, oh, he supposed this, and that is not correct. And I must go further to say here that some of us were very concerned in the last 1 week over this debate that's ongoing. That we should be very careful so that this is not used to scuttle profound revolutionary provisions that has been dealt with in this bill that would take our election to a level where in the foreseeable future, from what you can see, that whereas media houses will not announce or make a return, they can make projection from what we are doing at the moment. So direct primaries clearly is an issue, whether direct or indirect, is an issue for political parties. INEC don't conduct primaries. It should be noted. Our duty is to monitor compliance or deviation from their set rules and standards. But I also must say this, that it is not entirely new, whether direct or indirect primaries. And that is why Alexander Pope, the satirical poet, made a point that for farms, it is scarcely necessary to contend because what is best administered is best. There is nothing inherently so good or so bad about direct or indirect primaries. I must say this here, that it's a sad reality, Dr. Abati, that for 22 years of our practice of democracy, that today political parties are still grappling with the intricacies of managing themselves. It's most unfortunate. Look, modern democracy is inconceivable without strong, virile political party. As a matter of fact, political parties are the essential organ of the democratic process. And that is why, in the true tradition of party system, you find out that, look at the US, look at United Kingdom, that we are also imitating. How How do you explain in a country that you cannot have a credible register of your member 22 years? We even got a point about it where people who are foundation member of political parties, it is we see all the time, they have to go and do what we call revalidation of membership, such that people who were member will no longer be member. There are strange things we are seeing. There's a new book of democracy in this country. But in UK, those who form the founder of the Democratic Party in 1828, which is a period of 193 years, the first person, you see the name there. Second person, they have their names there on the... Go and check the archives. The Republican Party was formed in 1854. It's 167 years. Is it in UK? The Conservative Party from 1716 of the Reform Act, 260-something years. And Labour Party, 95 years. What is our problem? That today we are fighting over whether direct or indirect. Okay. But the issue that needs to be taken on board in all of the system as follows. One, with direct,
well,
you need what you call a credible register of your members.
Well, Mr. Igini, before you outline those other factors beyond the credible register of voters, let's take this short break. And when we return, we'll be right back with you. Stay with us. This is The Morning Show, and our guest is Mike Igini, Resident Electoral Commissioner, Akwa Ibom State. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us is Mike Igini, a lawyer and the Akwa Ibom resident Inec Electoral Commissioner. Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Igini. Before we went on that break, you were trying to outline a number of issues in terms of what political parties you have. You started with a register.
Right. Yes. Now, I am just saying that, first, I want to appeal to all stakeholders. That some of us who are getting worried over the way this debate is going, having regard to the fact that the clause with respect to direct or indirect primary is contained in the same bill where we have profound, work that have been done with respect to other part of the electoral process. So that at the end of the day, we don't have a situation where, like under the Namani situation, just one item destroyed every other thing. In 2019, because of the issue about schedule of election, we had issues. So we want to prevent that. And so, coming to the two direct or indirect, they are essentially not new. Politicians have been using this for some time. But what we know is that both direct and indirect, the operationalization of either of the two has been nothing but a facade for undemocratic behavior. Now, let's take them seriously. For indirect, what are the issues? People have said, oh, that is the most cost-effective. That is not correct. Because that has also placed burden on Inec. Inec has already been sending people to go and monitor. So we'll be spending money there. Two, indirect. It is politicians that discredited that process. How? How do you explain a process of nominating a candidate that the people who eventually become delegates, you sew uniform for them, you keep them in a hotel, nobody can speak to them, they are carried like prisoners on the day of the primaries, taken to the venue, not to speak to anybody, and not to be heard, not to be seen, in such a way that aspirants cannot campaign to them why they should be the candidate. That is terrible. They spend so much money in buying them up. We all know this. It's common knowledge. They are the ones that discredited that process. Now, for direct, what are the issues we need to take on board? Direct approximate popular democracy. And for us as a commission, as we said, we should leave that for political parties to determine. But we have a duty to provide technical knowledge, technical information, in line with Part 1, Section 2 of the Electoral Act that says Inec should educate Nigerians based on the words from our institute on sound knowledge of democracy and democratic processes. Therefore, with respect to direct primaries, as you know, that all over the world, the credibility of any election is predicated on a credible register of voters. At the moment, 22 years, there's no credible register of political party member in this country. We lost it since after Professor Humphrey Nwosu, when at that time the emphasis about party registration was about membership. Membership. That was the emphasis. But you go to section 225 of the Constitution, it now says that just anybody, once you have an office, there was a shift from evidence of membership to now evidence of having offices. Consequently, people have taken over party ownership. And that was why Joseph Scopita made the point very clear that in a democracy, in its work democratic elitism, that in the final analysis, democracy is all about just a few people. And that when you talk about who should be a candidate of a political party, Scopita said that that is a decision usually taken by people who already have influence and power.
Right.
All right? That is why the party have been taken over. And so for direct primary, you need a credible reserve member. Because what we have said before is that 1, 2, 3 of you are aspirant trying to get a ticket of a party. You give laptops to your supporter, they are registering members. She gives laptop to members, you are a registering member, and you are going to have a primary on Saturday. The question is, on what basis are you basing? What is the total number of party members in that particular ward as at the time of the conduct of that primary? Because the control of party membership card, it is not centralized, it is not controlled. So I can register as many as possible on that day. We flood the entire place and say, we are doing. And that was why you find out that the votes, garnered from direct primaries do not reflect in the election, because ordinarily if your party have given you so much vote during the primaries, I mean, in addition to the campaign you have made, you should have more vote. So really, for us to do that, and it's not a difficult thing to achieve, we now need to have a registered member which has to be published by the political party at the ward for objections and claims. Once that is done, they have a single register. It meant that just like what Inec is doing, Inec will provide for 2023, around August or November next year, we'll be through with the entire CVR. We are going to give, as we've been doing since the time of Jega in 2011, we'll give a register of voters to political parties in Nigeria so that you can see where you had the population, the data to go and campaign. But in political party primaries, you don't have, you talk about list of elders, list of caucus, absolute nonsense. That is what we'll be saying. So for whether primary or indirect or direct primary, look, to let people know, a day will never come when INEC will determine a candidate for a political party. But we have a duty under the Constitution to monitor and ensure compliance to rules that have been set for either direct or indirect.
Right. So beyond that monitoring duty, what will INEC, or what can you do at this point? Because if you recall, recently, yesterday, former Senate President Bukola Saraki is urging President Buhari to just ensure that this Amendment Act bill is passed into law for the interests of the people, rather than, as you mentioned, allow the baby to be thrown out with the bathwater over this issue of primaries. For him to make that call, it's a reminder that the whole amendment is in jeopardy. What can INEC do at this point to ensure that that bill is amended?
Well, I mean, INEC is just one of the stakeholders across the country. What we are also doing right now is just to draw attention and to make a appeal, just as we did with the issue about whether transmission or no transmission. You know, it shows that as a people, when we listen to one another, we will arrive at a consensus on the best way to go. Right now, we are worried about what is going on. Probably what the National Assembly would have done, probably if they knew that this kind of thing will come up, will be to have a separate bill for issue about mode of primaries, severe that, and have the bill containing all other provisions. For example, look at what has happened with respect to Section 49, now having up to subsection 11. Look at what has happened to Section 52, of the Electoral Act. These are profound, revolutionary provisions that are contained in the bill that must not be truncated. That is the concern that we have. So for us, we will continue to appeal to all stakeholders that it will be in our interest, so that with the provisions that we have that we're looking forward to, we want to continue to have elections that reflect the will of the people as given at the polling unit. And like you're talking about Anambra. If you look at the success we recorded in Anambra, who would have believed? Who would have believed the election, given all the apocalyptic projection about whether election will hold in Anambra? Do you know that even on that day, on the 6th, at the end of that day, despite those glitches that happened, which I need to even explain, we recorded 88.5% success of the beavers on that day. Because as at that day, out of a total of 5,720 polling units, at that very day, we already uploaded 4,987 to the Inec portal. Out of 4,636, if you deduct the 86 polling unit without voters, that's a remarkable success. On the issue about glitches and all of that, you all know that we worked under my colleagues who were there, the commission, the security agent. We were under extraordinary situation, such that people who were trained, a number of them, they were scared, and every parent should be concerned about what happened in Anambra. So we have to rely on what we call a emergent plan, because we have both rational plan and emergent plan. We have to rely on the emergent plan by trying to train people as quickly as possible. But despite that, to record 88.5% of the beavers, because the Bimodal process is a new sheriff in town that is bringing tremendous energy of hope, of integrity, of transparency in the accreditation process, so that this democracy that we fought for, this democracy that people pay the supreme price for, will be one that all of us will be proud of, to renew it by ensuring that the will of the people at all times.
Mr. Igini, so much more to talk about, but we seem to have run out of time.
Time is already the enemy.
Yes, we would have loved to take you up on beavers and also about what Inec can possibly do in the future with regard to voter turnout, and also about lessons from Anambra. But we want to thank you very much for taking time out to join us right here in the studio in Lagos. Thank you.